But now we get to see him versus Future, and I think this will be a much more even match. And I think Future actually has to be quite careful. The Future is a scrappy Terran, really living up to the Terran ideals, so he's no slouch.
He is no slouch at all. Well, time for us to stop slouching on the intros. Is in the bottom left-hand side from Apprentice Esports, our Blue Zerg, Ukko.
In the top right is the Red Terran. We have Future.
Anything we expect to see here in terms of builds or strategies that, you know, might set these guys apart from just kind of our plain standard ZVT ZG?
If Ukko ever played really unstandard, that's not a word, non-standard. I think both of these players don't lean heavily in one direction or another, because even though I think of Future as someone who can absolutely do some aggressive tactics, I also remember a lot of his attempts to also try and go 3cc into some really nice controlled 16 marine pushes with a couple of tanks and all that. So I don't say that he's like full on cheese. And then for Ukko, I feel like we did see some maybe like roach attacks, something like that last season, but it wasn't just everything the guy did, right? No equivalent to, say, a Bly in this matchup. So I think with a best of 3, gosh, I mean, I think staying standard might be the way to go. I do believe Future is the type of Terran that would experiment a little bit more with some of the mid-game attacks, like a Hellbat attack, for instance, even though they're kind of a meme at this point. I think Future is the type to do so. So I'd be looking out for that. Maybe some even 2-base committal. Future has been experimenting with all the Terran builds that he can, but I just don't know what he has planned for this best of 3 versus a player that has very recently beaten him, and quite convincingly as well. Last time they played, Ukko 3-0.
Oh, that's a solid result. Yeah, as you were saying it, I was thinking, Future, I would not be surprised to see like a 2-base all in at some point, right? Just really try and push the power of that 2-base, because that's Future in a nutshell. That is his bread and butter. So he already opens here with a second gas, so wants to be a bit more aggressive off of the 2 bases before seeing that super fast 3cc, which is what we saw a lot from the European TVZ earlier. So that's already kind of stepped towards that more aggressive nature that Future likes to show, staying on a lower base count. Not that he can't go up to 3 bases, although if he hits 3 bases, sometimes maybe we think 8 racks from him. But yeah, those kind of more aggressive builds, those aggressive tendencies tend to shine for Future. And from Ukko, I mean, if you know that going in, obviously you can play a bit more carefully around that. We'll see what sort of style he picks. For the moment, just Ling speed, but still potential to maybe play some kind of roaches at some point. But just go into Ling Bane. For the moment, everything is kind of open to him.
Yeah, I'd still put Future in the more aggressive side of things, but it isn't enough, especially with the matchup kind of playing out the way that it has been these last few months. I mean, we do have the rise of the forward 2 racks that can result in a lot of different options, but Future did not decide to do that this time around. And otherwise, I feel like it has pushed towards more like 3cc setups, basically. It is difficult to actually execute the 2-base attacks on some of these maps. And the more so, it's about kind of offsetting, unsettling the Zerg player, which Future is pretty good at. Actually getting maybe a couple of free kills. Nope, managing to not hit a single drone. Ooh. But now finding the drones, there it is. Ukko, not with a whole lot of defense, made a mistake right here. 2 Hellions and a Reaper going to cause some big damage.
Yeah, I mean, big damage indeed, especially for 2 Hellions and 1 Reaper, right? If this was, 4 Hellions you get and you're like 7 works, it's like, okay, well, kind of like it, but the Terran gave up some map control. No, 7 drones for 2 Hellions. That is amazing damage early on, and Future is going to be absolutely loving that. So there's a great start from Future, and that's the kind of damage which then leads him into more aggressive follow-ups, and just timings in general are going to be that much more powerful, that much more difficult to stop from Ukko's point of view. So yeah, rough start for Ukko. He has to try and stabilize from here and not let anything like that happen again. This is already a bit too much, and it's going to be tough to not let anything else happen because we've got a Liberator moving across the map and just so much else still setting up.
Ukko playing a bit of a dangerous game. He didn't really make all that many Lings to safeguard against future Hellion attacks. He got back to building drones as soon as he felt like he could, basically, which actually meant that Future had an opportunity to run in again with 2 Hellions, or even 4 if the Queens are out of position, of course. But that also means that he recovers a little bit on the drone kills. Still needs more recovery, of course. Being even workers with the Terran player is bad news. The Hellions helping out a little bit, the Liberator helping out a little bit. Future so far in control of the early game. Might even get a queen here. Nope, not quite. Ukko finally having a handle on this early game defense.
I was going to say, of all the places to put that Liberator, you know, because he's from the natural, you try and check the main. Of all the places to put it, I feel like on the base with 3 queens right next to you was maybe not the place. Maybe just fly it out and come back again later. But either way, still found himself a good amount of damage overall. And, you know, if nothing else, the Liberator distracted. I mean, there's drones pulled off the natural that were idling around the 3rd base as well. So just a chaotic few moments in general from Ukko, not having a comfortable start to this game in the slightest. And you look at what Future's lost, still only the 2 Hellions plus the Liberator, and now he's getting his Hellions repaired up, so they're going to be nice and healthy to aid with these Marine pushes. And, you know, at this point as well, the Hellions, they don't have to join the push, they can also defend a counterattack to keep your 3rd base safe, just allowing the Terran to focus more on the Marines and so on across the map if you feel like you need these Hellions or something to defend your 3rd. So, just option upon option from Future. I mean, the damage done early really sets the tone for him being successful here in Game 1.
Yeah, it's certainly a success so far, but I do recall Ukko kind of being very capable of taking some early game damage, making some early game mistakes, and then ultimately still getting to, well, not a maxed out army, an army that he can work with. And then it was kind of like watching someone just bludgeon someone. You know, it wasn't necessarily all that pretty, but it did the job. So Ukko was trying to get there again with Ling, Baneling, Roach, Ravager, which I think is very much a bludgeoning type of composition. It's not as completely sturdy as maybe Roach is purely, but it's also not as potentially like glass cannony almost as a Ling Baneling. It's not ready to go yet, and the attack is already here. So Ukko maybe mistiming the production of units just a little bit. Future already on the attack with 2 tanks, going to cause a canceled 4th base, which really does need to get up like now. So Ukko is still in trouble.
Yeah, he absolutely is. He's got a few Lings across the map, but there's a bunker set up on the 3rd base. A few Lings aren't going to make the difference, although they might catch these couple tanks trying to go home. That's a awkward one. Ukko didn't realize it was only the 2 tanks, so the 2 tanks actually kind of get away with that. And that's going to be a nice little save for Future, because obviously that could have been a little bit painful. You see the Hellions joining back up there as well. Everything from Future just falling back. He's very happy to have cancelled the 4th base. Now he's going to go creep spread hunting. And the more of this creepy pushes back, the better time he's going to have pushing on in a little bit further down the line.
On the line, Ukko will have probably a maxed out army. He probably won't have very much bank. I don't know about his technology, but probably will get there. And it will still be up to, you know, how do the engagements happen. But Ukko has made at least a lot of creep shed for himself over to the left side, the right side where he lost the 5th, or the 4th that is now becoming the 5th. That's still dangerously low, but on the now new mining sign, the place that Future is going, that was a lot of creep spread that he has to clean up first, giving Ukko time to at least start building up army. He actually started to add an infestation pit, thought he maybe was able to go into a hive. I think that's a bit of a reach. I think getting maxed out first. Oh, infestors. No, okay, that actually might be a great idea. However, we need to actually get there and then, of course, find Future unexpected, not going to splits, and then we can really talk about some severe damage being done. I do like that choice.
Yeah, I think it's a good one to definitely give you a bit of a comeback mechanism as well, especially as you're still playing equal workers and everything. The Roach counterattack's been trying to lurk around and find something for a while, but a single tank setting up and just a few Marauders, enough to push this back. The rest of the army pulling back as well. Would have been better to go around the left side and maybe preemptively cut off these Roaches, though I appreciate that maybe at first you were a little bit worried that this was going to actually be these Roaches just turning back around on your Bayou units. So either way, Future gets a pretty good chase. The tanks dropped off to actually help a bit, and he's actually going to take this as a push all the way down the left-hand side, so using this to accelerate on towards this left side base of Ukko and see if he can get some work done here.
Future just missing out on Marauders slow is his only mistake so far, but otherwise adding on some Marauders against this composition, good call, nice setup, clear up a lot of that creep spread. Now he should realize the Infestors are on the field, so he's already pre-split. But then you just know what you're trying to avoid. It's not the last second split against Banelings, it's a preemptive split. Whoop, I spoke too soon. Brought too many Marines forward, got a little too trigger happy as he saw the drones pulling away, thought like, oh, okay, I got this. He does still get the hatchery, but a little more costly than he was intending.
Yeah, just too many. I mean, more units than you really needed to lose. Little counterattack, grabbed a siege tank already, looking and try and grab a second. Not quite going to be the case as the reinforcements of Future are beginning to defend. The tank is getting dove on heavily. The tank is just going to have to keep on running. Don't stop, just keep going. Okay, we're good. Nice little save on that siege tank there, as obviously Ukko loses quite a few units to not gain too much there. Didn't even really turn Future around more than he was already going to turn around, because he was kind of done having killed off the base on the left side. Yeah, a bit of a shame about that Infestor, because he knew about it for sure. He was pretty well pre-split, and then he just chased it a little bit too far, and I even thought at first he might be able to just target down the Infestor with a group of units, and then, well, no, everything clumped instead and said, hey, fungal me.
Mm-hmm. So it was a pretty nasty fungal, but it didn't really change the end result, which is the Ukko's once again set down to a one less base than he would like. He does have a 4th base, but now he'll be on a 5th, right? Ooh. Great target fire on some of these infestors, especially when the tanks got in range. Very much all that shift Q from Future. And Ukko also, of course, just taking simple losses, like everywhere on the board. Numbers not looking so hot. Down 30 army supply. No big advantages either. That Hive, he's trying to get to an Ultralisk Cavern, which I don't think is actually going to be that helpful. You know, he's going to get like 2 or 3, and then, you know, they're going to get sniped. I'd actually much prefer him just diving towards Vipers to deal with the tanks.
Yep.
But not the case.
I think Ultra Cavern's a massive misplay here. There's already a ton of Marauders on the map. We've seen this for a long time because he played Roaches. And yeah, there's tanks and everything. There's just not a setup here for Ultras to really be good. As they see a little Ling counterattack is going to get a wraparound, catching some units, but even what you clean up here, it doesn't come freely. A lot of Lings going down for it. I thought there was going to be more Marines showing up than that, so I guess Lings will prevail at the end. Overall, Future's numbers are still very, very healthy, though. 4th base up and running, and of course, he's just forcing Ukko to constantly rebuild a 4th, so that knock-on effect on Ukko's economy is just going to keep on building. I do not believe these couple of Ultras are going to do anything. I think they're going to absolutely melt this Biotank force.
Yeah, if we could just look at the income advantage, which is really not that great for Ukko, non-existent, and then the resources lost. Resources lost is doubling now for Ukko, so he would have needed a much better blue line right there to make up for that, and absolutely not. And even then, even if he did, the amount of tanks that Future has been able to build up here, 12 of them, is incredibly intimidating against any type of army. The only thing that would deal with that would be Vipers, and even then, it'd be a very long, drawn-out process. Certainly headbutting into the choke where the tanks are aimed is not going to work out.
You know, you mentioned the Vipers a couple times, and actually it's very confusing to see us like hit Hive Tech against tanks and be like, oh yeah, you know what I really need here is Ultras, not any way to deal with like all of these siege tanks. And I get it, maybe you feel like your current army ain't gonna do it, but the reason your army can't do anything is because of the tanks, and the most obvious answer to that, you know, to me is Vipers, and I think to you as well, and to pretty much everyone. So I don't really understand what kind of went through Ukko's thought process here to decide, yes, Ultras is the answer compared to saying, Vipers, right? And I mean, Vipers are usually just such an obvious go-to for Zerg, and when there's that many tanks on the map, I feel like even more so than usual. So a little bit weird, I think.
I agree. It's a little bit weird. Maybe just had this idea in his mind, right? Kind of doing the mental imaging exercise and saying, I'm going to do this, and then end with this. Mm-hmm. But the game was already thrown off so much off the track that it just was never going to look very pretty. Yeah. But yeah, no, it definitely should have been Vipers, because I saw the Hive producing after the Infestors, and I was like, I guess you could maybe still afford that for Vipers, because that would be very beneficial. Yeah, because I was going to initially say, I don't know about reaching towards that Hive. Like, that's, ugh. But then, oh, okay, no, Vipers would be great. And then no Vipers ever made it. So it really was, like, I think when Zergs barely afford a Hive for, like, 2 or 3 Vipers, I really understand why they risked it for the biscuit, you know? Mm-hmm. When they do it for an Ultralisk Cavern, I'm like, really? You risked it for the Ultralisk Cavern? Like, okay.
It's like the worst kind of biscuit. Like, take whichever biscuits are good, and it's just like, you risked it for that? Like, bro, you gotta get your priorities straight, man. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Alright, well, game number 2 going to be Grezvan. We saw a lengthier game building up on Grezvan earlier. It was kind of ruined by a couple Niduses that went completely undefended. So what I'm trying to say is this map does generally lead towards potentially kind of longer macro, you know, back and forth games and splitting it up a little bit. But that does come down to obviously not taking major damage early. And Ukko really was just in the wrong early game, right? He just took way too much damage off 2 Hellions. You can't take that damage. And he played a risky scenario after that as well, because you mentioned it, he could have lost even more if Future had just gone in again. Future respected the potential, oh, you probably are going to have something now, but the reality of the situation was, no, he actually didn't. So we need to see a safe open from Ukko, otherwise he's going to be behind the entire time. And in the top left, looking for that from him, it is going to be Ukko.
In the bottom right, up 1, he is the Red Terran, Future.
Yeah, excited to see Future doing well. It was a fun play to watch. You know, it was, you know, something about the American, like, aggressive Terran nature is just, like, you know, always very fun, right? It always becomes very scrappy, sometimes can become a bit memey because of just how messy those games can be, so it's always been fun to watch Future, and obviously great to see him having some success, but love to see Ukko pull it out as well, man. We talk about the Swiss format, and I do feel the more I, you know, get to know it and kind of understand how it's going to play out, I'm like, man, it's brutal. Like, this is your second match. If you lose this, you're a match away from being eliminated. It just feels like, I'm like, you know, at 0-1, I'm like, well, you get to play some easier players. It's like, no, Ukko and Future aren't easy players. I'm like, oh my god, that's the level of this tournament. Everyone's freaking good.
Yeah, you know, like it kind of brings you closer to like the face of the Grim Reaper than the other style of groups did, where you really, like, even if you were down 0-3 when you started off the groups beforehand, oh, it was bad, but there's always that hope, right? You're just like, well, what if this happens and that happens, then I win the rest of my games? No, literally, if you go 0-3 here just to start things off, you are actually just, as soon as you lose 3 series, you're gone. So I think that there's not as much kind of a hope being, you know, dragging you along, which yeah, some people are definitely going to be very scared of. And in this case, Ukko is now 1 game away from being in that position and still having to face, as you were saying, very good players. So I really don't think Ukko is going to be like massively favored against anyone else here. Like, maybe better than others, but not massively.
Yeah, he's just at that kind of rough sort of level in this now very competitive Americas region where everyone is going to be very good, and like you say, it's hard to find someone. He's on the lower end of the table, but like good enough to have that push. It's a brutal format for that, you know, the players in this sort of position, right? So, yeah, every single best of 3 is counting. And right now, oh, did we get the block on that extractor so it couldn't go down again? Drone does not get to creep spread safety. And that's a drone kill early. Future having a good time.
He actually seems to be having a good time. I'm kind of glad he said that, because I saw his earlier micro on his Marauder in the last game too. And I don't know, when maybe particularly the Terran players too, when they start doing those little micro tricks, I just feel like they're having a good time, you know? They're really gelling, they're really feeling it. Sometimes it's, superfluous, but it still, to me, is like a signal to how much they're just gelling with the game. In future, if he is playing his absolute best, which is just in question because he is, you know, North American pro, not always full time, is one of the best players in the region. You know, he defeated Scarlet in one of the regions, but then he had some like personal stuff going on, so he didn't really get to perform up to that level again in the seasons after. But yeah, if he can play at 100%, he's really good.
Yeah, I love how he's playing so far, as you have Hellions making their way across the map. Ukko has 4 Zerglings, which, you know, if the Queens are in a good position, you can deflect these Hellions, but we gotta make sure that that's the case. You do have Overlord's position and poised to kind of give you that heads up as to where the Queens need to be. But, yeah, just be a little bit careful, because 2 Hellions last time were quite dangerous, and you can see it happening again, right? Like, we're splitting up 2 sets of 2 Lings. It's just not a lot if you get past the Queens at first, but, of course, Future going to respect and not go diving by. He is building into an armory, however, ZG. We are going to see a bit of a Hellbat Lib attack to open up this game number 2, which might also catch Ukko off guard if he's still trying to be a bit greedier and still trying to stay lower on the unit count.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I kind of called it just because I feel like Future is the type to throw this in every once in a while, but I do think it's an excellent idea after you may have gotten a glimpse of the way the Zerg player defends in game number 1. So he saw that there was a lack of early game defense. There was no cautionary Baneling nest. He might have even kind of seen how the Queens move and realized, oh, I can take advantage of that. Because a lot of the time, the Hellbat defense is more so about Queens being together and ready to go than necessarily about like Banelings being available, but Banelings would make it very easy.
Well, Hellions wolf into Hellbats, and we've got ourselves 8 Queens and 16 Lings and a Dream. There is the Liberator that's going to go around the back. Itachi tried to relocate there, but sees the Spore Crawls. They're going to dive further. The Hellbat's not really doing much. This kind of Hellbat attack's kind of awkward, right? Because I guess they're kind of distracting for the Liberator, but the Liberator is very well held off by the Spores, and so the Hellbats just don't find much at all. The counter-attack, but there is going to be a wall-off, and very unexciting Hellbat play.
What else is new, am I right? No, it's I think the actual most devastating Hellbat attack that we really have is the Marauder one. Well, that's awkward.
What happened here? You just left the... You just lowered the wall?
He just lowered the wall at the worst possible time before anything was actually leaving the wall too. So this was just this is just a smack your head, man.
I mean, I wasn't even looking over here because it's like, cool, he's walled off. There's Lings there. Everyone knows it, and okay, we lose 4 SCVs. Well, that's a bit of a shame. Kind of a random moment to take some damage on the Terran side. I mean, it's oftentimes like, you know, the Lings counterattack, and it's like, oh no, my walls, you know, have not got a wall off, and that's why you take damage while hellbatting on the other side. But he had all the prep. Like, look how much free supply he has because he was instantly preparing all these depots and making sure he was walled, only to have the wall down. Like you overbuilt depots, you overbuilt the wall, only for it to not come into play and to lose SCVs. Like, what a shame.
Yeah, and apparently it was only because he wanted to start getting some long-distance mining, which I'm actually not sure is... I think what it is that it gets your SCVs already doing the job, so you don't have to think about it later on, because, you know, attention is a resource in StarCraft 2. But I'm pretty sure with the amount of SCVs that were long-distance mining, they were still getting benefit from being oversaturated in the first 2 bases, right? Because you get benefit. It's just less and less as you get more SCVs.
Just diminishing. I mean, up to like...
Exactly.
I think like 3 or 4 over is still pretty good for the long patches as well, so... Yeah. It's a fun graph
all around a bad... It is, but just to clear it up, all around a bad idea to lower the supply depot.
Absolutely. The depot lower was not smart. Tell you what is smart, Future just having 20 more army supplies showing up on the Zerg's doorstep. I mean, I like this part of it as he pushes across, and is he going to find a 4th base again? It really looks as though he will, so honestly, kind of out of nowhere, we just waltz across the map and say, by the way, you've kind of overdroned. And you know what? He's not wrong. Overdrone, no bane speed yet, 1-1's a mile away. We're getting pathogen glands. Like, there's an infestation pit, there's pathogen glands. That is why there's not the units necessary here for Ukko to defend this.
And 13 queens.
Yeah.
We don't need that many. I know queens are good, but...
Are they that good? A lot of people would say yes, CG. A lot of people would say they are.
No, it is, I don't know if you saw the GSL group with, was it Dong or Guinbian, I think? But there was like a similar, it was a really, really awesome game if you haven't cast it, but it was so funny because the queens were like the go-to option of defense. And I basically was like, either you have to admit that queens are overpowered and that they're viable here, or that the guy made too many queens. And I think it's the same case here, where it's like either these queens really are overpowered, or we admit that maybe the queens are the best defense. Woo! Fungal almost hit everything, but a little less than half.
Yeah, we lost one Infestor straight away, so you only had one of the 2 Fungals to drop there. Now we're going to load up and just go into the main base. I kind of love it a little bit. Why not? And you're going to be able to control the ramp, and this map especially, you can kind of control, really, the run up into the ramp from quite far away, so that's really neat. That Infestor goes down as well. Oh my goodness, all this money you've spent getting these Infestors out. Well, that's an amazing fungal growth, do not get me wrong. That is exactly what you're looking for. I was going to say it's all gone to waste, but apparently not. Are we really going to try and evacuate these tanks? We do get 3 of the 4 out of there. What a wild set of events as Future keeping up the pressure. More Marines rallying across the map. He's still good to go. Marines stemming up a storm. There's only one bailing. It's targeted down. Now there's no fungal CG. Is this just too much Terran? I think it is.
Yep. I mean, Ukko was trying to defend so close to the common reinforcement point. That's just terrible news for any race. GG, GG.